Okay, so you know that green card, right? It's been like this iconic thing, the symbol of stability for folks coming to the US, chasing the American dream for generations. But like lately, have you sensed a shift? I mean, especially with how the Trump administration has been handling immigration, it seems like a lot of green card holders are getting anxious, maybe even scared. I've even heard of people like hesitant to travel abroad, just generally being more cautious in their everyday lives here.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Like this sense of security, this bedrock that lawful permanent residents have always relied on. It's like it's kind of crumbling, you know? And that whole thing with Mahmoud Khalil, that student protest leader at Columbia, his detention really brought this issue to the forefront. The administration is using this legal argument, something about potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences of recent deportation. It's definitely raising eyebrows and making people nervous. It feels different, like a real departure from how things were done before.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're going to dig into today in this deep dive. Is this like increased scrutiny of green card holders? Is it legit? Is it like a necessary step to protect national security? Or is it overstepping boundaries and kind of chipping away at the rights of people who came here legally and built their lives here? That's the question we're tackling.
Right. So let's break down the logic behind this tighter oversight, right? The core idea, as VP J.D. Vance puts it, is that there's a fundamental difference between a green card holder and a citizen. And
Yeah.
that difference means permanent residents shouldn't have, like, an automatic right to stay here indefinitely, especially if they're seen as a potential threat.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that the administration's arguing that a threat doesn't necessarily mean a criminal conviction.
Hmm. So they're saying even if no formal charges are filed, just the perception that someone's actions could hurt U.S. interests, that could be enough to get them deported. Like Vance even said it outright. It's about who gets to join our national community. That's pretty strong language, very intentional. It frames it as like this active choice, deciding who belongs and who doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at the bigger picture, their argument is that a green card isn't a right, it's a privilege granted by the U.S. government. And part of that privilege is, well, the expectation that you'll obey U.S. laws and maintain what they call, legally speaking, good moral character. Now, this isn't a new idea, immigration law. These standards have been around for a while.
Okay, but good moral character, that's kind of vague, right? What does that even mean, practically speaking? Like, historically, green cards have been revoked for things like, actual criminal activity, document fraud, or ties to extremist groups. So now, those who support this stricter scrutiny are saying that broadening the definition of a threat, it's just a proactive measure, like getting ahead of any potential security risks down the line.
Right, and they're really emphasizing the whole America First angle, you know. They frame these policies as a way to protect citizens, making sure that this privilege of residency goes to people who are, in their view, contributing positively to the nation.
That definitely clarifies their stance. Okay. And they also point out, legally speaking, green card holders don't have all the same rights as citizens. So they see stricter enforcement as just reinforcing that distinction. Like Vance saying citizenship should hold more weight than just having a green card. It's like different levels of belonging in their eyes.
And then there's the deterrence argument. The idea that if you make these deportations public, especially high-profile cases, it sends a message, a warning, to others who might be thinking of doing similar things or things the government considers unacceptable.
Right. And Mahmoud Khalil's case, even though he wasn't charged with anything, fits into this narrative for those who support stricter oversight. They use it as an example, like, see what happens, and the attention it got. Probably intended to discourage what they see as, politically sensitive or disruptive behavior from green card holders.
Now let's flip the script and look at the counter-arguments.
Yeah.
Critics of this whole thing, they say the administration's basically conflating activism with criminal behavior, and that's a huge problem. It raises serious concerns about due process and creates an atmosphere of fear in immigrant communities.
Yeah, no kidding. A big worry is due process, right? Immigration attorney David Leopold, he's been very vocal about this. He sees the expanded use of this adverse foreign policy consequences clause as a dangerous precedent. He points out that in our legal system, especially for criminal stuff, you need solid proof, like beyond a reasonable doubt, before you can really nail someone with serious consequences. But this clause, it seems like it could allow for deportation without that level of certainty, without a conviction.
That's a really important point. It undermines the whole innocent until proven guilty principle, right?
Right.
Critics are saying this could give the government a lot of power to act, like deporting someone, based on what they perceive as future risks or potential foreign policy issues rather than on actual proven wrongdoing.
Right, and that leads to the whole chilling effect on free speech and activism. Like, think about Mahmoud Khalil, the student protest leader. His detention sent shockwaves through immigrant communities. His supporters are adamant that he wasn't a national security threat, that he was targeted because of his activism, especially his stance on Gaza.
And if you zoom out and think about civil liberties in general, there's a real sense of fear among advocates. They're worried. If protesting or having certain political views can be interpreted as adverse foreign policy consequences, then who's safe? Leopold's question, who's next, really captures this widespread anxiety. It could be environmental activists, gender rights advocates, anyone who opposes the administration's policies.
Yeah, it's creating a really scary situation, even for lawful permanent residents who haven't done anything wrong. Immigration lawyer Latoya McBean Pompey, she's talked about how her clients, who used to feel secure, are now living in fear even though they've followed all the rules.
We're even hearing personal stories that really highlight this fear. Like there's Marina Sinden, a Canadian business owner in Washington state. She had a clerical error on her record, but it was resolved. Still, she's super hesitant to travel internationally now, worried about potential reentry problems. It shows how deeply this uncertainty is affecting people, even when there's no legal issue.
And it's not just about travel, right? This fear of being wrongly deported. It's making some long-term permanent residents rethink their whole future in the U.S. Like Maria, a business owner in Colorado, she's had a green card for years, and now she feels like becoming a citizen is the only way to be truly safe and secure here long-term. It's like they're losing trust in the system.
Yeah, and in some cases, like with Marina Sinden, people are even considering leaving the U.S. altogether. The idea that it's not welcoming anymore, that it might even be hostile, even to those with legal status, that's a big problem. It could hurt the country's ability to attract and keep talented people from around the world.
Another really troubling aspect that opponents bring up is the potential for racial and religious bias in how these policies are enforced. There's a legitimate concern that certain communities, like those from the Middle East or Africa, and other marginalized groups within the immigrant population, might be unfairly targeted.
Like, there was this story about a Palestinian green card holder who's afraid to wear a keffiyeh in public now, worried about being singled out. This kind of self-censorship driven by fear, it really shows the chilling effect of this increased scrutiny. Critics say these subjective judgments about what counts as foreign policy consequences, they're just too open to abuse and bias.
So, where do things go from here? This debate doesn't seem like it's ending anytime soon, so what should we be looking out for?
Well, we're likely to see some legal challenges. Immigration attorneys and civil rights groups are probably gearing up to file lawsuits, arguing that this expanded foreign policy consequences clause is exceeding legal limits and infringing on rights.
Right, and Congress will probably get involved too. They're already debating whether the administration's actions are within their power or if it's a case of overreach. Depending on how that plays out, we could see new laws either supporting or pushing back against these policies.
But beyond the legal and political stuff, public reaction is going to be huge. Will green card holders become more politically active, try to make their voices heard? Will we see a spike in citizenship applications as people try to get those extra protections? These are important questions to think about.
And what about the international impact? If legal residents from allied countries like Canada start having problems entering or coming back to the U.S., that could strain relationships.
So to wrap up this deep dive, I think it boils down to this fundamental tension. The administration's trying to balance, or maybe they see it as a breaking point, between national security and the rights and security of people who are here legally, who've built lives here.
Exactly. It's like one side is all about protecting American citizens and making sure residency goes to those who fit their idea of national interests. And the other side, they're emphasizing due process, protecting freedoms like free speech, and maintaining trust in a system that's supposed to provide stability and opportunity for immigrants.
So this brings us to a question for you to think about, as we end this. When you consider all these arguments, where do you think that line should be? Where's the balance between national security and the rights and security of green card holders? And what do you think the long-term effects will be, not just for those directly affected, but for the U.S. as a whole, its image, its ability to attract talented people from all over? It's a complicated issue with huge consequences, and it's definitely worth pondering.